top 3 creepy last words people said right before dying. Laura said that she was working a night shift job as an aide, caring for a lady with terminal cancer on hospice at home. The lady was starting to slip, so Laura woke up her family, 2 girls and a DH. They were all sitting around. She was pretty quiet and peaceful. All of a sudden, she looked towards the door and said, "Rex? Rex? You're here for me. I'm ready and they won't let me go." Laura then saw a shadowy figure come into the room and felt the creepiest evil spirit. She said that she's not normally spooked, but she was so glad when it was time for her to go home. She said that she turned to watch the spirit and the family was looking at her like, "What are you looking at?" The lady died later that day. A nurse said that she was helping another nurse with a patient who had lived a very hard life. He had numerous things going on with him, from cardiac to renal failure. This man was very much afraid to die. Every time his heart monitor beeped, he would go into a rage, screaming, "Don't let me die! Don't let me die!" She and the other nurse found out why he didn't want to die. About 0 to 100, his cardiac monitor started alarming VTAC. The nurses both rushed into the room. When they got to the room, the man was floating about 2 inches above his bed, and he was laughing. His whole look had completely changed. His eyes just had a look of pure evil in them, and he had this evil smile on his face. He laughed at the nurses and said, "You stupid aren't going to let me die, are you?" Then he laughed again. They were kind of frozen. One of them hit the code blue button, and then the man went into VFib. He crashed back onto the bed. They started coding him, but after 20 minutes it was called. 5 minutes after the code was called, several of the code team were in the room cleaning up, when this man sits straight up on the bed and says, "You let him die. Too bad." He then laughed and collapsed back onto the bed. They heard a horrible, agonizing scream, and so did every other patient in the unit that night. After that, they said that you could hear the words, "Don't let me die," being whispered throughout the unit. Every one of the nurses that night was pale and scared. Nobody went anywhere by themselves. By morning, the whispers of "Don't let me die" were gone. The night shift nurses had a prayer session in the break room before they left for home. They all had nightmares for weeks. Sue said that she had an older male patient who had a massive heart attack and ended up on a ventilator. She said that he was the meanest man ever. His granddaughter worked at the hospital and had apologized for his behavior. She told the nurses that he had always been quite around her. He would bite, kick, spit, and had to be restrained to keep him from pulling every line he had out. Sue said that they coded him 3 times during his stay. After the 3rd time, his demeanor changed and he became much more cooperative. The nurses explained the change as a bit of ICU psychosis that had resolved. The man became a frequent flyer in their ICU, coming in multiple times with CHF and becoming a regular at their outpatient CHF clinic. Sue said that he became a favorite. He was always smiling, laughing, and joking. One day he asked Sue, "Do you remember the first time I was here? How awful I was?" She assured him that she did indeed remember. He then said, "Do you know why I changed?" Sue replied that she didn't, but that she just thought that his meanness was related to his illness. He said no, it wasn't that. He said, "The last time you guys brought me back when my heart stopped, I woke up and remembered being in this very dark place. It was awful. It was totally black, and there was this awful smell of sulfur, and the heat was terrible." He said he called out and no one answered. He said that he remembered hearing that when people die and come back, a lot of them see a light and other good stuff. He said that he was scared that he didn't see a light and knew that he had to change. He lived a couple more years after telling Sue this story, and then he finally died in their ICU. Sue said that she has a feeling that he saw the light and the good things. At least, she hopes so.